Have you ever wondered why some women, despite pouring everything into a relationship, are eventually forgotten as if they never existed, while others, with only a passing presence, linger in a man's mind for a lifetime? This paradox is not about beauty, charm, or even skill. It isn't about knowing the right words to say, or using clever strategies to make someone stay. The secret lies much deeper, buried within the unconscious, in the symbolic images that awaken in a man's soul, often without his awareness. And here is the profound irony. What a man fails to fully grasp, what he cannot quite understand, is precisely what he can never forget. This is not a teaching on manipulation, nor is it an encouragement to play psychological games. This is a journey into the shadowed corridors of your own inner world. From these shadows emerges a unique kind of radiance, the energy that makes a man feel your absence even when he lies next to someone else. And to begin this journey, we must first understand the psychology of attraction and memory, especially through the lens of Jungian thought. Why perfection pushes love away. Imagine stepping into a flawlessly designed room. Every piece of furniture is aligned, every detail polished, nothing out of place. At first, the sight is pleasing, but soon, a subtle suffocation sets in. The sterile perfection leaves no space for imagination, no invitation for curiosity. Human beings by instinct crave surprise. We are drawn not to what is complete, but to what is unfinished, because incompleteness awakens the longing to explore. Love works the same way. When a woman gives endlessly, her time, her attention, her emotions, without leaving any space, she unconsciously suffocates the very desire she longs to ignite. A man may appreciate her devotion, but he will not be haunted by it. For obsession is never born from what is fully given, but from what remains hidden, unexplored, unreachable. This is why some women, though they may seem ordinary in outward ways, live forever in memory. They leave behind not a polished image, but a sense of incompletion, an unanswered question that keeps a man's unconscious searching long after she is gone. The cycle of wounds and chasing. So many women, perhaps even you, have felt the helplessness of giving everything, only to be met with forgetfulness or cold detachment. Like moths drawn to a flame, the more effort you pour in, trying to impress, prove your worth, or secure love, the further the flame seems to move away. Carl Jung captured this cycle when he said, "What we do not make conscious emerges later as fate." The woman who desperately tries to control love is often being controlled by her own unhealed wounds. Perhaps abandonment in childhood, perhaps rejection in early relationships. These unconscious pains drive her to chase. But the paradox is brutal. The more she chases, the further away love slips. This is not because she is unworthy. On the contrary, it is because she has not yet confronted the unconscious forces that guide her behavior. She is like someone trying to fill a cracked vessel. The more water she pours in, the faster it drains. Desire and the unfinished. Jung often spoke of the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. In love, attraction lives not in perfection, but in shadow. A man is haunted not by a woman who lays herself bare, but by the one who leaves spaces unfinished, who stirs in him the sense of something missing. This missing piece is not a trick. It's the natural mystery of a woman who has confronted her own wounds and no longer seeks to be completed by another. She is not desperately giving in order to be chosen. Instead, she lives with a quiet wholeness. Her silence, her restraint, her ability to withhold without fear. These qualities awaken in a man a curiosity that logic cannot kill. Think of films or art that remain with us for years. The Mona Lisa's smile lingers because it is unfinished, ambiguous, impossible to pin down. Christopher Nolan's Inception ends with a spinning top, unresolved. These incomplete moments take root in the unconscious, growing into lifelong fascinations. Love works in the same way. Memory is emotional, not logical. Psychologists know that we don't remember with logic. We remember with emotion. The unconscious doesn't store photographs, but impressions. A fleeting glance, a pause in conversation, a smile that carries double meaning. These remain long after clear words and long explanations are forgotten. That is why a woman who constantly explains herself, clarifies her intentions, or overgives emotionally often becomes forgettable. She leaves nothing for the unconscious to work with. In contrast, a woman who knows the value of silence, who can let her mystery linger, becomes unforgettable, not because she tries to, but because she embodies the very principle of desire, the unfinished, the unknown. Solitude as magnetism. Another paradox. The woman who can live without a man is often the one most desired by men. Why? Because her independence touches something in the male unconscious, the sense of incompleteness he himself carries. Jung described the anima, the archetypal feminine image within a man's psyche. The woman who is at peace with solitude embodies this archetype. She doesn't need him to complete her, but she awakens in him the longing to approach her depth. She becomes not a satellite orbiting around him, but her own luminous center. And it is precisely this that makes him feel he can never possess her, which ensures he can never stop longing for her. The courage to look within. True magnetism begins not with external strategy, but with the courage to face yourself. To ask, what wounds am I carrying? What shadows do I deny? How much of my love is genuine offering, and how much is an unconscious attempt to heal through another? Jung once wrote, there can be no transforming of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion. The woman who dares to feel, who dares to confront her shadows instead of hiding them, radiates a different kind of energy. She no longer seeks constant validation because she has validated herself. She no longer gives endlessly because she knows her value is not in what she offers, but in who she is. This energy cannot be faked. The unconscious always knows what is real and what is false. A woman who embodies this authentic presence may not be the loudest in the room, but she is the one remembered. For what she leaves behind is not a performance, but an awakening, a stirring in a man's unconscious of something he cannot name. The secret of lasting memory. A man does not remember a woman because she was flawless. He remembers her because she left him with a sense of mystery, of incompletion, of something within himself she awakened, but he could never fully claim. This is the secret buried deep in the psychology of love. Desire is not created by possession, but by absence. It is not born from clarity, but from ambiguity. A woman who accepts this truth no longer chases, no longer overgives. She allows the unconscious to do its work, and in doing so, she becomes unforgettable, not as an image, but as a symbol, a mirror of the parts of himself he longs to discover. So before we move on to the specific attitudes that create this kind of presence, pause here and reflect. What wounds still drive you to chase love rather than receive it? What parts of your shadow do you still hide, fearing they will make you unlovable, when in truth, they may be the very source of your magnetism? Remember, attraction is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. And wholeness is not the absence of wounds, but the integration of them. The courage to look within. True magnetism begins not with external strategy, but with the courage to face yourself. To ask, what wounds am I carrying? What shadows do I deny? How much of my love is genuine offering? And how much is an unconscious attempt to heal through another? Jung once wrote, there can be no transforming of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion. The woman who dares to feel, who dares to confront her shadows instead of hiding them, radiates a different kind of energy. She no longer seeks constant validation because she has validated herself. She no longer gives endlessly because she knows her value is not in what she offers, but in who she is. This energy cannot be faked. The unconscious always knows what is real and what is false. A woman who embodies this authentic presence may not be the loudest in the room, but she is the one remembered. For what she leaves behind is not a performance, but an awakening, a stirring in a man's unconscious of something he cannot name. The secret of lasting memory. A man does not remember a woman because she was flawless. He remembers her because she left him with a sense of mystery, of incompletion, of something within himself she awakened, but he could never fully claim. This is the secret buried deep in the psychology of love. Desire is not created by possession, but by absence. It is not born from clarity, but from ambiguity. A woman who accepts this truth no longer chases, no longer overgives. She allows the unconscious to do its work. And in doing so, she becomes unforgettable. Not as an image, but as a symbol, a mirror of the parts of himself he longs to discover. So before we move on to the specific attitudes that create this kind of presence, pause here and reflect. What wounds still drive you to chase love rather than receive it? What parts of your shadow do you still hide, fearing they will make you unlovable, when in truth, they may be the very source of your magnetism? Remember, attraction is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. And wholeness is not the absence of wounds, but the integration of them. If love were only about pleasure, comfort, or the satisfaction of companionship, then why do we find ourselves haunted by those who caused us the deepest pain? Why does the memory of someone who left us abruptly sometimes burn more vividly than the memory of someone who stayed faithfully by our side? The answer lies not in logic nor in surface attraction, but in the mysterious workings of the unconscious. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious is not a chaotic void, but a vast reservoir of images, symbols, and instincts. It is the unseen engine of desire, the hidden architect of memory. What a man consciously knows often fades with time, but what stirs in his unconscious, an image, a symbol, a fleeting moment, etches itself permanently into his inner world. Longing is born not from clear, finished stories, but from unresolved mysteries. And the women who linger longest in a man's memory are those who unknowingly awaken these mysteries. The unconscious is a dark room. Jung described the unconscious as a dark room filled with relics, forgotten experiences, suppressed emotions, unresolved wounds, and hidden desires. Most people live without entering this room, preferring the clarity of daylight, the conscious mind. But sometimes, a single gesture from another person opens the door, even if only for an instant. Imagine a man going about his daily life, believing he knows himself. Then a woman enters, perhaps with nothing more than a piercing glance, an enigmatic smile, or a sudden silence, and without knowing why, he feels shaken. She has touched one of the relics in his unconscious, something long buried, something his rational mind cannot explain. It is not the woman herself he longs for. It is the part of himself she awakened, and when she leaves, the absence he feels is not only her absence. It is the absence of that newly awakened part of his soul, the pebble in the lake. Picture a deep underground lake. On the surface, the water appears calm and undisturbed. But beneath, powerful currents swirl in silence. A single pebble, when dropped into this lake, sends ripples spreading outward endlessly. A woman's fleeting gesture, a pause in her voice, the softness of her touch, the refusal to explain herself, can act as that pebble. Though small, it disturbs the unconscious lake, sending ripples through a man's psyche that continue long after the moment has passed. These ripples bypass logic. They do not depend on memory in the usual sense. Instead, they weave themselves into the man's emotional DNA, haunting him in dreams, arising in stray thoughts, resurfacing when he least expects it. This is why certain women are unforgettable, not because they were better than others, but because they stirred the underground waters. The power of projection. One of Jung's most powerful insights was the mechanism of projection. The unconscious, unable to face its own depths, projects its contents onto others. In love, this is especially true. The difference lies here. The first woman tried to resolve everything, to remove mystery. The second woman left space, ambiguity, and unanswered question. Jung believed that the unconscious is always drawn to what is incomplete, for it symbolizes the possibility of transformation. When a woman embodies even a fragment of mystery, she becomes that symbol. And in becoming a symbol, she becomes eternal in a man's psyche. desire beyond reason. Unconscious longing cannot be controlled by reason. A man may try to forget, to move on, to rationalize that she wasn't right for me, but reason has no power over the unconscious. Longing seeps into his dreams, into stray thoughts, into the quiet spaces of his life. He may wake one morning, years later, suddenly remembering her voice, her silence, her glance. Not because he consciously chose to remember, but because the unconscious never released her. And this is the secret most women overlook. To be unforgettable is not to be perfect, but to become the pebble in the unconscious lake, to awaken not his logic but his symbols. So far, you've seen that longing is not about effort, not about strategy, not even about being better than other women. It is about the unconscious, the dark room of symbols, projections, and unfinished stories. But how do you, as a woman, awaken this longing without playing games? What specific attitudes embody this quiet, magnetic power? If earlier we revealed the unconscious roots of longing, now here is where these roots grow into living attitudes. These are not techniques in the shallow sense, but ways of being, postures of the soul that stir the unconscious of a man more than any outward strategy ever could. Each of these attitudes is powerful precisely because they bypass logic and reach the symbolic, emotional layers of memory. Let us explore them one by one. 1. The depth of silence. Silence can be empty, awkward, or manipulative, but when rooted in inner strength, silence becomes unforgettable. This is not the silence of resentment, nor the silence meant to punish. It is the silence of presence, the stillness of a deep lake at dawn, calm on the surface, yet concealing unknown depths. Imagine sitting with a man. He asks a question, expecting a quick answer. Instead, you simply smile, pause, and let your gaze meet his for a few seconds before gently looking away. That pause plants a seed in his unconscious. He cannot know what you are thinking, but that very ambiguity awakens his curiosity. Psychologically, this ties to the Zeigarnik effect. The human mind remembers unfinished or unanswered moments more vividly than completed ones. Silence leaves gaps, and gaps ignite imagination. He may forget what you said, but he will not forget the moment you did not speak. 2. Retreating at the right moment. Presence is powerful. Absence at the right moment is even more so. Many women mistakenly believe that constant availability nurtures closeness. In reality, what is always available becomes invisible. Just as we rarely notice the daily sun, while we marvel forever at the rare northern lights. The art of retreat is not about sudden coldness or cruelty. It is about leaving when the connection feels alive, when the other person is savoring your presence. Like a song that ends before the final chorus, retreating at the peak ensures he is left yearning for more. This taps into the unconscious fear of loss. When you retreat gracefully, without drama, a man feels not anger but emptiness, a subtle sense of something vital slipping away. And it is this emptiness that makes him seek you, again and again in memory. 3. Keeping an air of mystery. Mystery does not mean pretending or playing roles. It means being selectively authentic, revealing layers gradually, allowing space for discovery. Think of an ancient house where every room is half lit. You can see some beauty, but not all. The half-open doors beckon you to wonder what lies beyond. A woman who embodies mystery lives in the same way. She does not rush to explain her life story, nor does she display every vulnerability at once. She leaves space, an unfinished door in a man's mind. Jung taught that men often project their anima, the ideal, feminine image, onto women. The more mystery you hold, the more vividly this projection takes root. And once a man projects his unconscious image onto you, forgetting becomes impossible. 4. Being at peace with solitude. There is a paradox in attraction. The less a woman needs a man, the more magnetic she becomes. A woman at peace with solitude carries an aura of independence. She is not alone because she cannot find companionship. She is alone because she values her own inner company. This energy unsettles the male unconscious. He senses he is not the center of her world. And precisely because she is whole without him, he longs to draw nearer. She becomes like a mountain, solid, unmoved by weather. He may never fully climb her, but he cannot stop looking toward her. 5. Communicating through symbols. Words are logical. Symbols bypass logic and strike the unconscious directly. A fleeting glance, a smile with hidden meaning, the slow turning of the head before walking away. These are symbols, not words. Psychology calls this impression memory. We may forget names, details, or conversations, but we remember impressions. The look in someone's eyes, the emptiness when they walked away. A woman who communicates symbolically does not over-explain. She allows gestures, silences, and expressions to do the speaking. These impressions are what carve themselves into the unconscious, far deeper than any speech. 6. Contradictory femininity, gentle and fierce. Predictability is forgettable. Contradiction is magnetic. A woman who embodies both tenderness and strength, softness and resolve, awakens emotional depth in a man that he cannot easily categorize. Jung wrote, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." A woman who embodies both extremes, nurturing yet unyielding, affectionate yet uncompromising, becomes a living paradox. This paradox makes her unforgettable, because the male unconscious cannot resolve her into a single box. She becomes like a stormy sky, beautiful, unpredictable, unforgettable. 7. Leaving without harm. Some women leave in anger, slamming doors, wounding the man's pride. Their memory fades quickly, covered over by defense mechanisms. But a woman who leaves quietly, without accusation, without blame, creates a different kind of absence. Her departure feels unfinished, unresolved, leaving the story open. And the unconscious cannot close an unfinished book. This is why years later, men may still think about the one who left softly, leaving only silence behind. She is not remembered as a conflict, but as a haunting question. 8. Not reacting to manipulation. Manipulation often comes in subtle forms. Withdrawn affection, guilt trips, backhanded compliments. Many women instinctively react, explaining, defending, pleading. But reaction feeds the game. The awakened woman does not react. She observes, recognizes, and then quietly withdraws. No anger, no drama, no explanations. Her silence is not weakness but strength. The refusal to play a role in someone else's unconscious drama. And paradoxically, it is this lack of reaction that burns into memory. For manipulation thrives on control. When control fails, the manipulator is left haunted by the absence of response. 9. Knowing your worth. To know your worth is not arrogance. It is the quiet peace of being whole, whether accepted or rejected. A woman who knows her worth does not shrink to fit into someone else's comfort zone. She stands as she is, even if it means standing alone. Jung spoke of the self, archetype, the deepest center of the psyche, where wholeness resides. A woman aligned with this self radiates calm authority. She does not chase or demand. She simply is. Men are magnetized not by her efforts to win them, but by the unshakable energy of someone who does not fear loss. For the unconscious recognizes wholeness, and once glimpsed, it cannot forget. 10. The journey of individuation. Finally, the most powerful attitude. Living authentically. Jung called this the path of individuation. The journey of becoming who you truly are. Beyond roles, masks, and expectations. A woman who individuates is not trying to be the perfect partner or the independent woman. She is simply herself, raw and whole, embracing both her strengths and her flaws. She no longer conforms to what the world demands, but listens to the rhythm of her own inner cycles. This authenticity is rare in a world of performances, and rarity is unforgettable. A man may not consciously articulate why she lingers in his mind, but unconsciously he knows she was real. These 10 attitudes are not tricks. They are doorways. Each one is a way of embodying yourself more fully, which in turn awakens longing not through effort, but through presence. To be unforgettable is not to shine the brightest, but to stir the unconscious in ways words cannot touch. Silence, retreat, mystery, solitude, symbols, contradictions, graceful departures, non-reactions, self-worth, and individuation together. They weave a presence that lingers long after you are gone. This is the power of the unfinished story. Like a half-read book, it demands to be returned to, again and again. Even years later, he may find himself replaying the what-ifs, the possibilities left unresolved. This is why many men long more deeply for women they never fully had, or who left abruptly, than for women with whom they had long, complete relationships. Closure ends longing. Mystery sustains it. The emotional echo. Emotions have echoes. When you throw a stone into a canyon, the sound reverberates long after the initial impact. In the same way, when a woman awakens deep emotion in a man, the emotional vibration continues long after she is gone. If the emotion was shallow, mere attraction, convenience, comfort, the echo dies quickly. But if the emotion touched something archetypal, something beyond words, the echo continues indefinitely. This is why some memories fade and others refuse to die. The echo depends not on the length of time spent together, but on the depth of the vibration first created. Longing as self-discovery. There is a hidden truth here. Longing is never only about the other. It is also about the self. When a man longs for a woman, he is also longing for the part of himself she reflected. Perhaps she reminded him of his innocence. Perhaps she stirred in him the courage he lacked. Perhaps she awakened in him the dream of a love he had not yet dared to live. Her absence forces him to confront the gap within himself. He realizes he is not longing only for her, but for the wholeness he briefly glimpsed when he was with her. This is why longing can feel so unbearable. It is the ache of one's own incompleteness projected outward. Why some women are never forgotten. Not all women leave such echoes. Why do some fade while others linger forever? The answer is not beauty, not status, not even compatibility. It is the degree to which she became symbolic in his unconscious. The unforgettable woman is not remembered for the facts of her existence, but for the feelings she evoked, the archetype she awakened, the mystery she embodied, the story she left unfinished. She is not remembered as a person only, but as a symbol, and symbols cannot be erased. The danger of clinging. But there is also danger here. For longing can become obsession. When a man clings to the memory of a woman as his sole path to wholeness, he risks freezing his own growth. He mistakes projection for reality, shadow for substance. Jung warned that projections must eventually be withdrawn. The woman is not the archetype he saw in her. She is not the missing piece of his soul. She is the mirror that reflected it. True transformation comes when the man realizes that what he longs for is already within him. The unforgettable woman serves as a guide, not to her, but to himself. The woman's role. So where does this leave you, the woman who seeks to awaken longing? Your role is not to manipulate, not to entrap, but to embody yourself so fully that your presence becomes symbolic. When you live authentically, when you move with silence, mystery, and wholeness, you naturally awaken projection in men. You become the mirror, and when you leave, whether for a moment or forever, you leave a silence that echoes, not because you tried to, but because you lived in alignment with your own depths. We now understand why absence deepens longing, projection, symbolism, memories, alchemy, emotional echoes, and unfinished stories. But longing is only one part of the mystery. Longing keeps love alive by ensuring that the beloved is never fully possessed. Even in the closest intimacy, there is always something just out of reach, some mystery, some depth, some part of the soul untouched. The poet Rilke wrote, "For one human being to love another, that is perhaps the most difficult of all our tasks. To love is good, for love is difficult. What makes it difficult is precisely this paradox. The beloved is both near and unreachable, both intimate and mysterious, the shadow of possession. The greatest danger to love is the desire to possess. When a man seeks to own a woman fully, her time, her attention, her soul, he destroys the very mystery that drew him to her. Possession closes the distance, extinguishes the fire of longing, and reduces love to control. But the unforgettable woman does not allow herself to be possessed, not out of coldness, but out of reverence for love itself. She knows that if she surrenders all mystery, if she gives all of herself without remainder, she kills the sacred tension that sustains desire. She remains near, but never fully captured. And in that refusal to be possessed, she awakens eternal longing. Sacred boundaries. To hold this paradox requires boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are sacred lines that preserve individuality within union. A woman with strong boundaries is not absorbed into the man's world, nor does she absorb him into hers. She allows closeness, but she also preserves her solitude, her inner life, her mystery. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole within oneself. Only two individuated people can love without consuming each other. Otherwise, love collapses into fusion or control. Thus, sacred boundaries are not barriers to love, but the soil in which love deepens. The eternal return. One of the deepest truths of love is its cyclical nature. Lovers come together, separate, and return. Each cycle renews the bond. Each return feels like the first. Think of the tides of the sea. The water retreats, only to return with greater force. The unforgettable woman embodies this rhythm. She knows when to be present and when to withdraw, when to embrace and when to let go. Her presence is never taken for granted, because her absence is always possible. And this rhythm creates not anxiety, but vitality. Love beyond time. When longing and closeness weave together, love transcends time. The moments of presence become eternal, because they are charged with the energy of absence. The memory of absence keeps the moments alive, like embers glowing in the dark. This is why some loves feel timeless. It is not the length of time spent together that matters, but the depth of the rhythm, how fully the lovers embraced the paradox of closeness and distance. The woman as keeper of the rhythm. In many relationships, the woman becomes the unconscious keeper of this rhythm. She senses when the bond needs closeness, when it needs distance. She withdraws not in cruelty, but in wisdom. She offers intimacy not in fear, but in freedom. Her gift is not manipulation, but attunement. She listens not only to the man, but to the deeper rhythm of love itself. And by honoring this rhythm, she becomes unforgettable. Love lives in paradox. It thrives on closeness, yet it depends on distance. It seeks intimacy, yet it reveres mystery. The unforgettable woman does not fear this paradox. She embodies it. She is near, yet never fully possessed. She gives, yet preserves her solitude. She loves, yet keeps the fire of longing alive. Awaken the unforgettable within you. If these words stirred something in you, if you feel the quiet recognition of truth within your own heart, don't let the journey end here. I share deeper writings, private reflections, and timeless teachings with a circle of women who are ready to embody presence, mystery, and unforgettable love. Subscribe today to receive exclusive essays not published anywhere else, guided practices for embodying mystery and depth, quiet reminders that keep you connected to your essence, early access to future writings and offerings. Step closer. The path of becoming unforgettable begins with one choice.